Hello, welcome to Rizal Reads. I'm Deja, and today we are going to go through all of the DNFs that I have had so far in 2025. Since I was in a huge reading slump this first half of the year, there are actually not a lot of books that I need to go through today. I think I only have about 12, which I think is actually less than my usual number by this time of the year. So let's go ahead and get started. The first one that we have is The Last One by Rachel Howzell Hall. You may have remembered me talking about this one in my romantasy reading vlog, and this is the first one that I actually DNF'd for the year and for that vlog. And honestly, I wasn't feeling the chemistry between the characters. I wasn't feeling the writing or the world building, and it wasn't for me. And the more that I've heard people like talking about it, the more that I'm just like, I'm glad that I DNF'd it because I was going to push through towards the end because I was like, oh, I want to see like where this one thread goes, but no. The next one was also for the romantasy reading vlog, and that was Rise of a Dark Throne. This one I thought actually had a interesting premise, but the execution was just not there for me. I don't think that the writing was all the way there. It had like a lot of like info dumping and just following too many characters for such a short novel. So yeah, I'm willing to try more by this author, but I couldn't vibe with the writing for this one. The next one is When We Crash by Cynthia A. Rodriguez. I felt that the premise of this one was very interesting. It follows basically this guy who's reincarnated because he basically has to show the god of death or something that true love basically exists, and that even if he's in like a different body, he and this other girl are like soulmates. And I was like, oh, this could be like super fun. But again, I could not vibe with the writing for this one. I don't think that it was necessarily like bad writing, but like I just felt like the story was so slow, and it almost felt very like early 2000s kind of writing. Like, I don't know. I just couldn't vibe with like the things happening in that book. And I also didn't know that this was actually in high school, which was interesting. Like, the guy is reincarnated into the body of a high schooler that probably would have died. So yeah, it was a lot of repetition, a lot of pacing issues that I just have problems with, and I couldn't get into it, unfortunately. The next one was also from the Romantasy reading vlog, and that is A Noble's Eternal Heart. I was actually very captivated by this one in the beginning. I really thought that the author pulled off the sexual tension between the characters very well, but then not even like halfway through, they pretty much like act on that sexual tension, and then like some semblance of a plot is trying to form towards like the 70% mark, and I'm just like, I don't really care about this plot. And it's kind of unfortunate. Like, it's just a short little novella. Like, it's less than 200 pages, but like after they just had sex with each other, I just found myself not caring anymore. So yeah, I DNF'd it. The next one was an arc that I had that I was trying to catch up on, and that is Young Blood by Sylvester Barzey, I believe that's the author's name. This one was also the writing. This one is a zombie apocalypse kind of thing, and I know I have problems with like the pacing. I feel like this one felt too fast at times, but then also very slow. It felt fast because there was like a lot of action scenes and stuff happening, but then there was also just like a lot of filler, I feel like. I don't know. It was just this weird like dichotomy. And then the author also like talks to the reader at times, and it just feels so out of place when they do it. And I don't know, there was just like so many things just not working for me in this story. And so yeah, I also thought that it was a little bit weird, especially in this current climate, that vaccines are the things that are turning people into zombies, which was an interesting take. And I also just didn't really connect with the characters. I don't think any of them really stood out to me, and I didn't really vibe with like the main character's voice. But yeah, it just didn't work for me, unfortunately. And then we have A Game of Thrones. This one, I don't think that it was bad, but since I watched the TV show, I don't feel the need to read this to completion, I saw a lot of the same like plot beats. It was just like a lot more detail happening when I was reading it rather than like what the TV show was showing. But yeah, I think because I watched the TV show, a lot of the scenes just felt very like long. And I was just like, okay, I know what's gonna happen. Can we just get to that point? And I was just like, I'm not going to finish this because I know what's going to happen. I think that it starts to diverge a little bit in the later books, but I think I'm satisfied enough with the TV show for now. And if we ever get that last book from the author, then maybe I will revisit it and see like how the author decides to wrap everything up instead of how the TV show decided to wrap everything up. And then we have the creation of Heartbroken People. I was really excited for this one because I thought that it would give me more like gothic horror, like creepy vibes. But the beginning of the story is so much background information on these families, and I was just bored out of my mind. There were like little moments of those like horror things coming out, but that took a very big backseat to telling us the family history of this influential family that we know in the back synopsis is going to be like an influential part of this woman's life. At the point that I did up that we were actually starting to get to the plot, but by that point I was so over it. I was like, I don't care anymore. And then we have A Legend in the Sky by Faye Oliander. This one was a disappointment, but unlike a lot of the other ones I talked about, I don't think that this one is bad. I think that my expectations were off. I thought that this would be more adult, but it feels more young adult. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but like everything just felt super young to me. And I also just didn't really like the dynamics between the characters. It just felt very typical of what you would see in a YA fantasy, especially when you're having like a character that doesn't really know anything, but everybody else around them kind of knows things about the world. So then they just explain things about the world to the character. But for whatever reason, the main character is the main character because they're special somehow. And yeah, I just never really liked that dynamic. So I think that if you want a portal fantasy, if you don't mind it reading like a little bit young, I would say try it out, but it just was not for me, unfortunately. The next one that I have is The Record Keeper by Agnes Gomillion. I actually read a decent amount of this before I decided to DNF it, and honestly, I'm kind of disappointed because I think that the writing was good, but this book is really just a setup for the second one. I feel like not a lot actually happens in this book. There is a lot of unlearning that the main character Erica has to do to basically unlearn the biases that she has about just everything that's going on in their world. It is a dystopian novel, so it's not like I wasn't expecting that to happen, but usually I feel like that's like the first chunk of the story, and then the character like starts to be like more proactive, and I just feel like we were like just so much into like her unlearning a lot of this stuff that I was just like struggling after a while. And I kind of knew that I would probably start to struggle around like the 30% mark just because there was a specific instance that I was just like, oh, this is taking very long. Like, I don't know how I'm going to feel about this. But then I was like, let me just keep going and see like how it's going to work. But yeah, I just couldn't push through those last 100 pages because I started not caring. And so when I start not caring about anything that's happening, that's when I'm just like, I need to let it go. And so I did. The next one that I have is the Divorcetante. And this one, it was purely because I could not vibe with the characters. It's almost like a second chance kind of thing, but the reason why they even like stopped like talking to each other, it kind of like made me mad and not like the female main character because I was just like, are you serious? Like, are you serious? And I won't say exactly like what happens, but when I found out like why they stopped talking to each other, I was done. I was like, I can't do this anymore. pair that with the fact that there was like a lot of just like little side conversations happening with the main characters and their friends. And I'm all for like seeing like strong friendships in a romance and just in fiction in general. But honestly, with how short this book was, I was surprised by how many times we actually did hear from a lot of their friendships and stuff happening. So, yeah, overall, I would say like maybe give this one a shot. I think a lot of people have been liking it. But yeah, once I realized like why they didn't talk to each other anymore, I just couldn't root for the couple anymore because I didn't like her. And then we have Blood Slaves by Marcus Redmond. I know by the time you're seeing this that the book will probably be out the next week. So I'm gonna keep it very vague, but this book was not what I thought it was going to be. I thought that it was going to give me vengeance, and it did not. It was a lot more setup of the brutality of like slavery and trying to give like them reasons for wanting to rebel and stuff. And it was just hard to read, and there was just like some cringy scenes happening, and I did not like the way that the women were portrayed in this one. And honestly, I don't think I liked anybody in this book except for Rafazi, who is the vampire, but he's not even really the main character. So I will leave that where it is because I don't want to like bash the book before it's even out. And I think that a lot of people have liked it. But yeah, this was not for me. And then we have another romance called Roses for Nyasha. This is a novella that I heard about from Threads. I was looking for more like closed door kind of emotional books, and the author said that this one would fit. And while this one is like more emotional, I will say that this one I feel like falls into the trap that I had a problem with a lot of these other books that I mentioned, and that is that it just says so much like background information, especially for this story that is less than 100 pages. I feel like majority of what I read, and I don't remember what percentage I DNF'd it at, but a majority of what I read was just like giving more background story on like why they are in this emotional rift that has happened between them. I hate when I'm just reading so much like telling of everything that happened. Like there are ways that you could show this information and you know going in that it is a strained relationship. So like I don't think that we needed as much information as the author gave us. And so, yeah, I unfortunately put this down because I couldn't get into it. And the last book that I have to talk about today is A Safe Place by E.M. Lacey. This is another one that had way too much like background information. There was just like so many little details, just like how we came to this world, because this is a apocalyptic story. And so they describe like the two children that she's like walking with, and like just how she ended up finding them, also explaining how we ended up in this apocalyptic world. This is not interesting to read in the first like few pages of the story. I wanted just a short quick read, and I wanted to try this author's writing because I've seen them in the space before. But yeah, this one I couldn't get into. But that is the end of my DNFs for the first 6-7 months of the year. A lot of them I had the same problems with as I mentioned before, but I'm really hoping that the second half of the year is a little bit better. I'm curious to know how many books that you guys have DNF so far this year, if you even DNF, because I know there's some like strong-willed people that will never DNF a book. If you don't want to do that, you can also just leave whatever emoji I put on the screen. But yeah, that will be the end of this video. I really hope that you have enjoyed it. I thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!